Before we begin today's story, I have a quick announcement. If you've experienced something creepy, haunted, disturbing, or completely unexplainable, we'd love to hear about it. We're always looking for real viewer stories to feature on the channel. Simply send your story to nightmarepassage5@gmail.com, and it could be featured in one of our upcoming videos. Now, with that said, let's get back to today's story. For some details, I am an 18-year-old, 5'7" female, and have just recently graduated from high school. I live with my parents and younger sister. I do not want to attend college just yet, so instead I am working to save up to buy my own place. This incident happened a few months ago. I did not have work that day, so I took the opportunity to catch up on some much-needed sleep and allowed myself to sleep in. However, my sleep in was quickly cut short when my neighbor's dog started to bark like crazy. I live in a unit, which means all the houses in the unit are directly next to each other. The balcony on my neighbor's house, which was also where they keep their dogs, was on the right side of my bedroom window. And for context, my front door was on the left side of my bedroom window. The barking jolted me awake, really annoying me at the time. It was 8 a.m., but then I had the realization that my neighbor's dogs only really barked that loud if they saw or heard something coming from my house, as the balcony they were on was in direct view of my front door. Realizing this, I immediately thought my parents or sister was still home and running late for school or work. But after checking their locations, which I would do if I were too lazy to get up and look, nobody was home but me. I was a bit uneasy, but the barking stopped, and so I brushed it off as the dog seeing a cat or something. I tried going back to sleep, but when I could not, I just got up and decided to get ready for the day. I went into the living room and started opening the curtains to let some light in. In the middle of opening the last curtain, my heart dropped when I jumped back, tripping over something and falling onto the floor. I sat up in shock as I looked up to a man dressed in black peeking through my living room window. I knew he could not see me because we had a second sheer curtain behind the real curtains that allowed people inside to see outside, but near impossible for anyone outside to see inside. I sat there watching in shock as he continued to try to look through the window. After what felt like forever, the man stepped back, reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and looked to be answering a phone call. He started mumbling something, and I could not really hear what he was saying. The only words I can make out were, "Hurry the fuck up," and "Nobody is here." A wave of adrenaline hit me, and I quickly scrambled to grab my phone, which I had dropped near me. The police where I live are absolutely useless, so automatically I called my dad, who was a big, scary Polynesian and who was also extremely protective of my family and me. I told him about my situation, and immediately he was on his way, telling me to grab the bat that was kept in my parents' room and continue to watch the man. About 5 minutes later, I see a car pull into my driveway, and I immediately panic. My dad drives a truck, but the car that pulls into my driveway is a gray van. The man that I saw earlier was no longer in sight, and the van pulled in closer toward my house, also now out of view. At this point, the panic level is at its max. I rush over to the window showing the driveway and peek out the window. I then spot an additional 3 men. They were wearing hoodies with their hoods over their heads, blocking me from seeing their faces. I quickly shut the curtain and begin to hear car doors opening and closing, then loud shuffling coming from around my house. I try to think as quickly as I can of something, anything that could help me. I then came up with an idea. At the front of my house, we have a keypad that activates our house alarm, which, for those who do not know, is like a burglary alarm that my family usually turns on before we leave for big trips. There are a bunch of alarm detectors in my house, which when detecting movement immediately start blaring a loud alarm. An alarm loud enough to hopefully scare away the intruders. After a few minutes, I finally muster up the courage to run to the front of my house and activate the alarm whilst waving my hand in front of the detector a few feet away. The alarm suddenly goes off, and the loudest sirens start blaring throughout the inside and outside of the house. I peek out the window and see all the men hurry back into the van, then speed out of my driveway and onto the road. I watch until they are completely out of sight. Once they are, I fall onto my couch, alarm still going until eventually turning off. I sit in silence, still holding a firm grip on my bat until I hear my dad's truck pull in. I run out crying and hug him. I genuinely have never experienced anything like this, nor have I ever felt so vulnerable. It is scary how risky these people are to do such a thing in the middle of the day, mind you. To this day, I suffer from crazy amounts of paranoia, always making sure everything in my house is locked, as well as checking my surroundings every few minutes. I have always thought to myself how I would react or what I would do in situations like this, and I usually come up with heaps of solutions. However, this experience just goes to show that you will never know how you will react in a situation until you are actually in it. We have no idea who those people were or why they were here, but we hope to never see or encounter them ever again. I, 29 female, had a very strange and unsettling encounter with an older man back when I was in college. Like many college students, I was struggling financially. I lived in an area that most people would consider wealthy, a very popular tourist destination for rich families. Because of that, I decided it would be a good idea to join a sugar baby website to try and earn some extra income. I had heard horror stories from other sugar babies, and I would often get cold feet when it came to actually meeting up with the men I talked to online. At one point, though, I decided to push through my fears. I needed money for rent, so I made plans to meet one of them. It was nothing extravagant, just a trip a few hours out of town to a popular hot spring. I was still extremely nervous and cautious as the trip got closer. I made sure all my friends had my location and every detail about this man, just in case something went wrong. The night before the trip, he reached out to confirm the plans and wanted to make sure I felt as comfortable as possible. He asked if I needed him to pick me up and if I wanted my own room at the hotel, in case I didn't want to share a room with him. I told him I would drive myself so I could leave at any time if I needed to, and that I would like my own room. As I drove to meet him, my nerves kept growing stronger. I should have listened to my gut. When I arrived at the hotel, it was nothing like what I had expected. It was a tiny, dingy motel with only about 10 rooms that looked almost abandoned. I saw the man standing outside talking to someone I assumed was a worker. They seemed friendly, like old pals. I got out of my car and walked over to meet him face to face for the first time. He was nothing like I had pictured. He looked very dirty and tired. He asked if I wanted to take my things to the room. When he opened the door, I saw 2 beds. One of them already had his belongings scattered all over it. I asked about the separate room we had discussed. He told me the motel was sold out for the night, so we would have to share. I should have gotten back in my car and left right then, but I was tired after the long drive and it was already getting dark. Sharing a room with a stranger seemed more logical than driving for hours back home on unfamiliar roads with no cell service in the dark. After I put my belongings in the room, the man suggested we go to dinner. He said the restaurant was just down the road and that he would drive. I agreed and got into his truck. I immediately noticed how disgusting it was inside. There was mud everywhere, and all the plastic surfaces were caked with a thick layer of what I assumed was dog slobber and hair. He got on the main road and started driving toward the restaurant. I had thought it was just down the road, but I was wrong. We drove for about 30 minutes before we reached the next town over, where the restaurant was actually located. Sitting down to eat, I was filled with dread. I didn't want to be there any longer, but it would be far too late to drive home by the time I got back to my car. I ate quickly and tried to keep the conversation polite and friendly. This man did not seem like someone I wanted to anger. When we finally got back to the motel, I started searching for anywhere else to stay in the area, but everything was too expensive for me. He then offered to take me to the hot springs, and I agreed again. Being in a public place felt like the safest option. After we arrived at the hot springs, he told me why he had chosen that specific location. A girl he used to see worked there, and he wanted to make her jealous. After a little while, it became clear that she no longer worked there. He wanted to head back to the motel. Once we were back in the room, he started talking about his life. I began to think that maybe he wasn't as creepy as I had first thought. Maybe he was just a lonely older man who wanted some company. I started to relax a little as the conversation continued, until he began talking about his ex-wives. I'm a little fuzzy on the exact details because I became tense and panicked with every sentence he added. What I do remember is that his first wife was murdered, and he came home to find her body. His second wife had gone missing, and the police believed she had been killed and hidden somewhere. I calmly excused myself to the bathroom and started texting every male friend I had, asking them to come get me. It was almost 2 a.m. at that point, and no one was willing to make the long drive. I did have one friend who called me and told me to keep the call running as long as I needed until I could leave safely. I came out of the bathroom and told the man I was going to go to sleep. He said that was a good idea since it was so late and headed into the bathroom. He came out just a few seconds later holding an old straight razor. He asked if I would help him shave his face before bed and made a comment about how nice the razor felt on his neck. I declined and told him I was really tired and needed to sleep. I plugged my phone in to charge with the call still running, set my alarm for sunrise, and tried my best to pretend to be asleep. For the next few hours, I could hear him walking around the room and rummaging through his belongings. I am certain that at one point he was standing at the foot of my bed, just watching me sleep. As soon as my alarm went off, I got up, ran to the bathroom, and changed. When I came out, he was already fully dressed and the front door was wide open. His whole demeanor had completely changed from the night before. He was angry. I quickly grabbed all of my items and headed toward the door. As I was leaving, he threw some money at me and yelled that I needed to get all of my shit out of the fridge, which was just a half-empty bottle of Gatorade. As I was pulling out of the parking lot, I noticed the surprising lack of vehicles for a place that was supposedly sold out. When I finally got home, I went to delete my profile from the site. That's when I saw I had a new message from him. He said he wanted to let me know how nice it was to spend time with me and that he wanted to come visit me in the near future. I was younger and much more naive than I am currently, and a huge pot smoker. I had just moved to Raleigh, North Carolina from California, so my medicinal marijuana card did not transfer across states. I was constantly looking for connects, often walking up to random strangers with a $20 bill in hand, wanting to buy a gram or so. The bus stop in downtown Raleigh has a tunnel that you walk through to get to it, and dealers often hung out by the entrance. So I would walk up to them, $20 in hand, asking for a gram or so. Mind you, I was a 20-year-old, scrawny dude who dressed pretty outrageously because this was my normal attire in California, and I stuck out like a sore thumb. This would turn a lot of the dealers off, as they thought I was a narc and would often refuse. I knew an older man who I had become acquainted with who always had good weed, so when he was there, he could vouch for me. One time, I went to the tunnel, and he was not there, so I asked a random guy if he knew where to get weed. He said yes and asked if I had the money. I handed him the 20. He said something like, "Cool, I will hop in your car and direct you." As I said, I was much more naive back then, and I agreed. He directed me to what I would consider the hood in a pretty rough part of Raleigh and told me to wait in front of a dilapidated house while he went in. So I waited. It was around 10 minutes that I was parked in front of this random house, just chilling in my car, and my heart rate was slowly going up. I had no clue what was happening inside of this house, or if he would come back out again and just keep the money. Finally, he opened the door and motioned for me to come in. I should mention, I was and still am 6 feet tall, but have always been relatively scrawny. This man towered over me, probably somewhere around 6'5" and easily twice my weight. Anyways, I followed him inside of this house. The lights were all off, and immediately upon opening the door, I realized it was a hoarder house. He told me to follow him, and I walked on and over piles of garbage, through a small walkway cut through the piles, and into a tiny bedroom. He opened the door, and inside was more trash, on the bed, the floors, just everywhere I looked. Sitting on the bed was an old, fat lady in a nightgown. She was completely blind, and I am not exaggerating. She was staring at an old TV which was playing gray static on no particular channel, with white noise in the background. My heart rate spiked as I realized the man behind me had shut the door. He sat down onto the bed and pulled out a crack pipe. He began to load it with what I assume was crack cocaine, a little white rock, and lit the pipe, inhaling. He coughed and passed the pipe to the lady, who took a big hit and began mumbling random, incoherent things. I was beginning to have an anxiety attack as the man passed the pipe to me. I said, "No thanks, man. I just wanted to find some weed. I do not smoke anything else." He said, "Smoke this." I said again, "No thanks, man. I really just wanted weed." And before I could finish, he said, "Nah, man, smoke this." At this point, I was feeling incredibly uncomfortable and really intimidated. As I stated, this guy was way bigger and taller than me. I had never smoked crack in my life and never wanted to either. Reluctantly, I took the pipe and brought it to my lips, taking the tiniest hit I possibly could, and tried not to inhale, blowing it out as soon as I had taken it in. I saw that as my opportunity to leave, as I knew he would not have any weed by that point. I jumped up off of the bed and got out of there as fast as I could. I kept looking over my shoulder to see if anyone would come out of the house, but no one ever did. I got into my car, feeling strange, as my lips and mouth tingled with this disgusting metallic taste. Needless to say, I guess I did get pretty high, and do not hardly remember my drive home. You would think that situation would be enough to turn me off to meeting and giving random people rides, but alas, this was not the case. Either way, random giant man and blind, blank TV staring lady, let us not meet again. This leads me to story number 2. I do not remember how much longer after that first situation that this one happened, but it could not have been more than a few months. I had just gotten back into my car after a long work day, and after smoking some weed in one of my favorite parking structures in downtown Raleigh. I was about to head home, windows down, and about to play some good music when a random lady yelled at me from about 100 feet away. I could not hear what she was saying, and was a little leery of strangers by this point, but still naive as ever. I yelled out my window, "What?" And she began to walk closer to my car. She was emaciated and looked pretty terrible, with gaunt facial features and a rail-thin body. I immediately could see that she was an addict of some sort. She was probably in her late 50s, but looked to be about 70, as happens when you have been addicted for God only knows how long. She got to my car and was relatively lucid, asking me if I could give her a ride down the street. I know now that the lucidity was because she had been high when she talked to me, and this is relevant because her behavior completely changed only a few minutes after I had agreed to let her into my car. She began giving me directions, telling me to turn left here, right here, etc. So after a few more turns, she began to get somewhat confused, losing her sense of direction. I said, "Look, I really want to be going home now. Is this place close?" To which she replied, a little manically, "It is just right down this way." So I turned where she directed me. Another few minutes came and went, and she was starting to become agitated because she could not remember where she wanted to go. At this point, I just wanted to go home. So I said, "I am sorry, I am going to have to drop you off here. I need to get back home." When I said this, she immediately became hysterical and started crying and mumbling at me in the saddest sob I had ever heard. It was a mixture between a croak and a cry. "No, please, it is just right here, please." And she tried to grab my steering wheel and pull it towards a street I had been hoping she was not leading me down, as at the time, I had known it was the place where all manner of dealings went down. I was incredibly familiar with downtown Raleigh at that point, and Swain Street was not a place where anyone would want to be found, day or night, even with someone else in the car. So I told her, "Do not touch my steering wheel. You need to get out right now." And I pulled the car to the side of the curb onto Swain Street. She proceeded to put her skinny hands around my throat, half-heartedly choking me and begging me to keep going. I was more annoyed than worried at that point, as she was so frail that I knew she could not hurt me. So, unfortunately, I obliged. I drove further down the street and saw at least 20 men, open carrying guns, dealing from the corner of the street, hanging out on porches, smoking weed and crack. I was immediately nervous and just wanted to get the hell out of there and go home to lay down. I pried her hands off of my neck and said, "If you touch me again, you are getting out of my car." I should have kicked her out long before that, however. She then said to me, "Pull over right here." So I did. Immediately, 3 or 4 dudes started canvassing my car, looking through the windows. She rolled down my passenger window and started yelling at anyone who would listen. "Hey!" And a man walked up to my car. I am trying to make myself small, as I am in way over my head by this point. The guy says, "What you want?" And I said, "Nothing, dude. I do not know this lady, and I just want to go home." And he says, "So you do not want to buy?" And I said, "No, I do not know this woman, and I never should have let her into my car." And he then says, "Okay, I am going to help you out. I see her staying over by the corner across the street. She strips for money. I will show you where to drop her off." Then, he proceeds to get into my car without even asking. Now, him and the crackhead lady are arguing all the way while he is directing me where to drop her off. Eventually, it gets so heated that he says to me, "All right, stop right here." I stop. He proceeds to the front seat, opens her door, and grabs her hair and yanks her out of the seat and onto the curb. He then gets into the front seat and shuts the door. All nonchalantly, he says, "Hey man, could you buy me a sandwich at this gas station and drop me off?" And I was just so tired at that point that I said, "Sure man, you helped me out, so I will help you out." I dropped him off at the gas station and gave him $10 and got the fuck out of there. I am a forensic pathologist, and my job is to determine a body's cause of death. Over the years, I have built up an emotional boundary between myself and the bodies that I work on. It is pretty sad, but very helpful at times. I am not a sensitive person and have been able to stomach a lot while on the job, but last night I was asked to take a look at a body. This was very last minute, and I immediately knew something was wrong when I got called in unexpectedly. When I got to the morgue, all of my co-workers and even other doctors were surrounding the body. Everyone seemed puzzled and were hoping I could help, though I am not much more experienced than any of these guys. One of the first things I noticed was the smell. While it was awful, it did not smell like any corpse I have ever come across before. This smell was life-changingly bad. I held back vomit for a solid minute. I then got a closer look at the body itself. It was wearing what seemed to be an old plague doctor costume. When I asked why it had this on, the doctors told me that they could not remove it. It was fused to his skin. One of the other pathologists said that the body was found in the basement of an old church that had completely burned down somewhere in France. According to police reports, not even the locals knew about the incident. It was only discovered when 2 survivors called local authorities for help. They said that this guy in a plague doctor outfit was trying to kill them, and that he had killed their friends earlier. As terrible of a story as that is, this guy being dead raises even more questions and concerns. I looked over some X-rays and CT scans that were done on him. His skeleton was human, but some areas looked warped. His jaws were stretched into the bird mask that he had on, yet his teeth were missing. His fingertips looked like they had been carved into spikes. The entire hand had black, rotten flesh. His body displayed a variety of injuries: stab wounds, gunshots, burn marks, crushed rib cage, and even a caved-in skull. All of these were easily fatal, but the weird thing is that all of these injuries had signs of healing. We then took a closer look at the body itself. All of the places where it was injured had indeed healed back up. 5 stab wounds on his back were healed up. 1 on his stomach and another on his chest had healed too, even though one had pierced his heart. He had been shot in the stomach, the right lung, and even in the head. All of these were healed. I thought that these guys had played some sort of sick prank on me by this point, but the more I looked, the more undeniable it became that this was real. I have heard of stories of people surviving injuries that should have been fatal, but this guy left me speechless. He had healed from all of these wounds, yet he lay dead in front of me. I was so confused that I completely forgot about the fact that he was fused into a plague doctor outfit. The outfit itself looked like it had jumped out of a history book, yet it had noticeable aging to it. Now that I am writing it down, it feels silly, but we called a historian over to take a look at the outfit. We think that this guy may have found a real plague doctor outfit and had used it to carry out the attacks I mentioned earlier. Perhaps he wanted his 15 minutes of fame. Surprisingly enough, the historian we called actually took us seriously after she saw pictures that we sent her. She said she will be able to come in a few days. Until then, we are keeping it at the morgue.